of Caesarea. We're standing more or less right about here, number one. And we're looking, where you guys were just overlooking at the marble statues, is this theater. We're going to talk about that in just a second, but just to get the overview of the site, like what are we looking at? The three major periods that the site is inhabited are first the Roman period. The major builder of the site then is Herod the Great. Herod the Great was the king of this land, the client king really. He wasn't independent, but he was a client king of Rome from say about 30 BC until around 4 BC. 4 or 3 BC. And we read about him in the New Testament in Luke chapter 2. Read about Herod the Great. Everybody knows him for what terrible deed that he did in Bethlehem? Killing the babies. Well, you'll find here that despite this wicked deed, that Herod the Great did many wonderful things associated with building. No other person can match Herod the Great's building that he did here in the land. His footprint looms large when you come to the land. Every place that you go, it's hard to miss Herod the Great's building activity. And this area is only rivaled by the Temple Mount in terms of both difficulty and audaciousness. This is amazing. This is an amazing feat because it's important to know where we are. Which way is this direction? To the west. So this way is north, south, east. We're in the plain of Sharon. Historically, this place is known by being very marshy, and that's because as the wadis and the nahals, which wadi is Arabic, nahal is Hebrew, that just means small canyons of water as they drain off the hills, they encounter a very thick crust here that blocks the rivers. It's not able to make it out to the Mediterranean, so that makes this entire region very swampy and marshy, and it was never really inhabited. In fact, it was it talked about in the Psalms or in the prophets, it talks about the Rose of Sharon, and it along with Lebanon and Carmel is seen as a beautiful place because of the vegetation, the flowers, but for the most part nobody lives here because you can't live here because of both disease like malaria and excuse me, and the fact that you can't get a crop, you can't travel through here, it's always flooded. So what Herod the Great did, and you should think also, no cranes, no major machines to build anything. He put a port where there was no port before. Now that's significant. In the north of here, in a place called Lebanon, there's a region called the Ladder of Tyre. And the reason why it's called the Ladder of Tyre, because if you look at a map, you'll see all of these bumps all along the coast, which are natural harbors. A natural harbor is very easy to define. It's a mountain coming into the water, and that creates, like if you go to the bay of like around San Francisco and Oakland, that's a very nice port. Or I don't know actually the places in Asia, but I'm sure there's very nice ports that are marked by land masses coming into the water. The problem here along the coast of the southern Levant or the southern Canaan is that it's sandy all the way up. The only place that you have a mountain coming into the ocean is where we're staying tonight, Mount Carmel, and there's a port there, the port of Haifa, in the Bible the port of Akko or Ptolemais. But what Herod did here is create a port where there was absolutely no natural anchorage, and he did so on a grand scale. Now if you look here, you can see the outline. It's not a great model, but you can see the outline where the white squiggly lines are supposed to be with the water. You see the lines going out and kind of creating a rectangle. What Herod did, and we'll talk more about this later, is he had his crews take large boats, fill them with newly invented underwater hardening concrete, and built this massive breakwater way out into the ocean, building it up into the point where he could build a series of these breakwaters to where ships could come in here, this is the main area, and have a port from Rome. This became the main receiving area for the entire region. This at the time was one of the four most important ports in the Mediterranean. And by saying that, we're saying the world, because the Mediterranean Ocean was the main ocean of the world. Because you're talking about Rome, the Roman Empire, Greece, you're talking about the Eastern Mediterranean. So Caesarea, where there was no port, Herod created one. And this gives us a glimpse into his personality. He's been called a megalomaniac, a egotistical guy who was very concerned with being well known. And we know him well from his architecture. Where there was no harbor, Herod made one. Where there wasn't a mountain, Herod built one, the Temple Mount. He knocks down the natural mountain, builds his own mountain, the Temple Mount, and builds a temple on top of it. So this gives us a window into who he was. Okay? Any questions?
How much of what's in the water have they been able to actually see evidence of?
Oh yes, we'll see some a video a little later that shows just a very nice reconstruction of what it looks like. But it goes out quite a ways. We're talking about, say, 150 meters out, even further, 200 meters out into the water. And imagine, I mean, working, no boats with motors. You're paddling out there, sinking this large structure, not just one, like countless ones, and then actually building structures on these. It was a massive feat. Any other questions? Okay, let's go to the theater and we'll talk about some of the biblical connections.